The first time Claire found the photograph, it was tucked behind the bathroom mirror. Old, frayed, and water-stained. A picture of her and a little boy, smiling, happy. The boy was maybe 6 or 7. Claire had no memory of him. She lived alone. She had always lived alone, but over the next week, she would find 4 more photos. And each time, the boy looked older and closer. By the time she found the last one, he was standing outside her window, and she finally remembered his name. Dewey. House in Gray. Hollow was too big for one person. Claire knew that from the moment she turned the key and stepped across the threshold, fresh out of rehab, her suitcase in one hand, her medical discharge papers in the other. A 2-story colonial with creaky floors and ivy-choked windows. Bought sight unseen through a state-run transitional program. A safe place to rest and recover. That's what the doctor had called it. A fresh start. She didn't remember buying it, but she didn't remember much at all. Her chart called it dissociative amnesia, likely trauma-induced. She remembered her name. She knew the year. She could still drive, write, microwave popcorn. But her past, entire years of it, was gone. Slipped through some crack in her brain during what they called a dissociative fugue state. Dr. Hellman said not to force it. Memories return on their own if they need to, he'd said, right before signing her release. Just live your life, Claire. Build new ones. So she tried. The first few days were quiet, peaceful even. She explored the house room by room, noting the water stains on the ceiling, the way the wind slipped through the old siding, how the kitchen always smelled faintly of cinnamon and mildew. There was an attic she hadn't opened yet. The door was nailed shut from the inside, oddly. Each night she sat in the den reading books she didn't remember buying, medical thrillers, courtroom dramas, a couple of Stephen King paperbacks, so yellowed they crunched when she turned the pages, and each night the same dream. A boy running through fog, barefoot, laughing, but no face. Never a face. It was a Tuesday when she found the first photo. She was replacing a light bulb in the upstairs bathroom when the medicine cabinet mirror slipped forward slightly, revealing a sliver of black tape along the back. Curious, she pulled the mirror off its mount. A small envelope was wedged behind it. Inside, a photograph. A Polaroid. Her, standing in a backyard somewhere green. Summer sunlight. Her arm around a boy, 6 or 7 years old. Blonde hair, blue t-shirt with a dinosaur print. Both smiling wide. She stared at it for almost an hour. The boy's face sparked nothing. Not even a flicker of recognition. And yet, something tightened in her chest. Something pulled. She flipped the photo over. A date scrawled in messy black ink, June 14th, 2017. Claire set it on the sink, backed away slowly, and sat down on the edge of the tub, heart pounding. 17 was a blank year. That night, she dreamed of the boy again. This time, she could hear his voice. He was calling for her, not Claire. Mom. Claire woke up drenched in sweat, her nightshirt clinging to her back. The word still echoed in her skull like a church bell after a storm. Mom. She lay there for a moment, paralyzed by the weight of that single syllable. The morning light filtered through the gauzy curtains, soft and golden, trying its best to make the world feel normal. But everything had shifted. She was still holding the photo. Her hands trembled as she got up and placed it on the kitchen table. She made coffee she barely drank, staring at the boy's face as steam coiled into the air. She didn't know what to do with it. Throw it away? Call someone? Who would she even call? The program supervisor, maybe. But what would she say? Hi, I think I might have a son I can't remember. It sounded insane. By noon, the silence in the house became unbearable. She decided to go for a walk. Something to get her out of her own head. Gray Hollow wasn't much of a town. A faded gas station, a closed hardware store, and a church with warped pews and one broken bell. The neighbors kept to themselves. The few she'd seen barely made eye contact. She ended up in the woods behind the house. The trees were dense, dark, dripping with old moss. There was something ancient in the way they leaned, like they were watching. She found a worn path and followed it. Half a mile in, she stopped. A tree, split by lightning long ago, sat like a throne in the clearing. Something was tucked between its roots. Another envelope. Claire knelt, heart hammering, and pulled it free. Inside, a second Polaroid. Same boy, a little older now, maybe 9, sitting on a swing set she didn't recognize. Scraped knee, crooked, smile. And Claire, her arm around him again. This time her expression a little more tired, hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. She felt dizzy. There was no date on this one. Just one word on the back, Eli. Her hands went numb, Eli. The name was a match held to dry tinder. It lit something inside her. Not a memory, not exactly. More like pressure. Like the beginning of a migraine that didn't hurt yet but warned you what was coming. She stumbled back home. Photo clutched tight, breathing shallow. She didn't remember a child. She didn't remember being pregnant. She didn't remember any man, any family, any clue. But she remembered the name, and it made her nauseous. That night, she opened a closet she'd avoided all week, the one in the hallway. Inside were boxes, stacks of them, all unlabeled, sealed with yellowing tape. She opened the first one. Children's clothes, dinosaur shirts, tiny sneakers, a drawing folded into fourths, a crayon-scribbled sun, and a stick figure holding hands, with a woman labeled Mommy. Claire fell to her knees. In the darkness behind her, something shifted, a creak, a soft footfall. She spun around. No one there. But the next morning, there was a third photograph on the kitchen table. She hadn't put it there. The photo was waiting for her beside her coffee cup. Claire froze in the doorway, heart punching her ribs, breath caught between inhale and scream. Her feet felt glued to the hardwood floor. The kitchen was still, silent. No broken locks, no open windows, no sign of intrusion. But someone had been here. Someone had stood in this room while she slept and left a photograph. Her hands shook as she reached for it. The Polaroid was still warm, like it had been freshly handled. Still damp at the edges, not dusty or aged like the others. It showed the boy, Eli, now older, 11, maybe 12. His face had thinned out, eyes slightly sunken, a kind of wary intelligence in them. This time he wasn't smiling. He stood in a narrow hallway she didn't recognize, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He looked tired, afraid. Claire stared at her own face in the photo, beside him, one hand on his shoulder. Her expression was unreadable, blank, almost vacant. The back was dated. February 3rd, 2020. Just over 2 years ago. Her fugue state had begun in March of that year. She felt the cold floor against her knees before she realized she'd dropped. Her hands pressed to her temples, breath shallow and fast, the edge of a panic attack surfacing from beneath the thin ice of control. Who had taken the photo? Why didn't she remember any of this? She called the supervisor from the state program. Told her, shakily, that she was finding disturbing things in the house. Didn't mention the boy, didn't mention the photos. Just said she felt unsafe. The voice on the other end was distant, distracted. Promised to put in a request for a wellness check, but said appointments were backed up. Maybe a visit next week. Maybe. Claire hung up. That night, she didn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt like breath on her neck. She tried locking the bedroom door but couldn't shake the thought that it wouldn't matter. Whoever had left the photo, they'd been inside. Somehow. At 3:12 a.m. she heard footsteps upstairs, not the groaning of the old house. Actual footsteps. Measured. Slow. She crept out of bed, every nerve on fire, and climbed the stairs with a kitchen knife in hand. The hallway was empty, the air colder up here. The attic door stood at the end, still nailed shut, still sealed from the inside. She pressed her ear to the wood. Silence. Then, a whisper. Just one word. Mom. She stumbled backward, knife clattering to the floor, heart in her throat. But when she returned with a hammer to pry the attic open, the voice was gone, and the wood looked untouched. No nails, no seal. The door was open. Inside, nothing but dust. Old toys, a small mattress on the floor, child-sized, and another photo, Eli, lying on that mattress, his eyes closed, paler than before. Claire screamed. Claire didn't remember how long she sat in the attic. Hours, maybe. Light bled through the cracked window, casting faint lines across the dust-covered floor. She held the photo in her lap, unable to look at it again. Eli, asleep, or something worse, on that mattress, in this very attic. The same sheets, the same blanket. A small plastic truck lay just beside him in the photo, and it was still there now, unmoved, as if he'd been placed in the room and simply forgotten. She finally stood. Her legs ached. Her head buzzed like it was full of static. This wasn't just memory loss. This wasn't just trauma. This was something darker. She took the photograph downstairs and tucked it under her mattress, afraid of what might happen if she left it out. Then she opened another box from the hallway. Closet, papers, school records, drawings, a journal, her journal. She flipped through pages of shaky handwriting. Scrawled entries, frantic and scattered. Mentions of Eli, notes about behavior problems. Night terrors worsening. Doesn't trust the social worker. Refuses to talk about what happened before. Before what? One entry, dated just weeks before. The amnesia episode caught her eye. He's acting like he's scared of me. I told him I'd never hurt him. I swore. But sometimes I see it in his face. Like he knows something I don't. Like I've done something terrible, and I don't even know it. Claire slammed the journal shut, bile rising in her throat. What had she done? Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves scraped against the windows like fingernails. She looked out and froze. In the backyard, just beyond the line of trees, someone stood watching. A boy. Blonde hair, thin frame, arms hanging at his sides. He didn't move. Claire raced outside, barefoot and breathless, but by the time she reached the yard, he was gone. She called out. Nothing, just wind and woods. Then, a sound. Something scraping beneath the porch. She crouched and lifted the sagging wooden hatch, a cardboard box. Inside, a sweatshirt, faded and torn. Blood at the collar. A child's drawing. A house, scribbled in frantic black crayon, the windows all red. And another photograph, Eli, curled in a corner of the attic. Eyes wide. A bruise on his cheek. Claire dropped it, hands trembling. Back inside, she locked every door, every window. Sat on the floor with the knife again, heart racing, waiting for the night to pass. Just before dawn, her phone buzzed. Unknown. Number. One new message. She opened it, a photo of her, standing in the attic, from behind, taken just hours ago, and one line of text beneath it. You said you'd come back. Claire didn't scream. She couldn't. Something inside her had gone numb. Not from fear, not anymore. This was deeper. Like her brain had finally started to understand that the rules no longer applied, that her life had slid off the rails into some space between memory and nightmare. The photo on her phone showed her standing in the attic, but she'd been alone. Hadn't. She enlarged the image. Shadows at the edge of the frame stretched too long. The figure at the center, her, was hunched slightly, almost cowering. But the most disturbing part was what stood behind her. A boy, his face not visible but his silhouette unmistakable. Just behind her, barely inches away, blurred like motion caught mid-frame. Eli. She barely slept. Every sound in the house became a threat. The pipes clicking, the walls settling. She started leaving the lights on in every room. By morning she had a plan. She needed answers, not memories, not guesses. She needed someone who could confirm if Eli was real, if she had actually raised a child, or if this entire thing was some warped hallucination bleeding out from the cracks in her broken past. She drove into town, found the public library. Dusty, near abandoned, with a single clerk who looked up but didn't speak as she passed. Claire searched local school records, enrollments, yearbooks, anything. She found him, Eli Margaretson, 4th grade, Franklin Elementary, 2019 to 2020 school. Year, her last name, no listed father. There was a note in the system. Withdrawn mid-year, no contact, CPS involved. Claire's chest went tight. She asked the clerk if there were archives of old newspapers. There were. She spent 3 hours combing through them, and then a headline. Local child disappears from foster custody. Last seen with mother under psychological evaluation. Her photo. Eli's. The article was vague. Protective language. The state declined to comment. The boy had been in and out of foster care. The mother had a history of psychiatric instability following a reported incident in 2016. No charges filed. The case had gone cold. Claire sat frozen, reading the piece over and over. A child gone missing. Her child, her. Back at the house, the sky turned black with clouds. Thunder rolled low over the hills. Claire opened the final box in the hallway. Inside, a spiral-bound notebook. Thick, water-damaged, pages stuck together. She peeled them apart. Drawings, dozens of them. Crude sketches, all by a child's hand. The same theme repeated again and again, a woman with blacked-out eyes, a child hiding, a house with no windows, a door with nails. The last page showed the attic, Eli curled in the corner, the woman standing. Over him, drawn in jagged lines, arms too long, eyes like hollow pits, scrawled beneath it in red marker, "Don't look away." As the storm broke outside, Claire heard footsteps again. Only this time, they didn't stop at the attic. They came down the stairs. Slow, deliberate, closer. The footsteps paused outside her bedroom door. Claire stood frozen, her back against the far wall, clutching the knife so tight her knuckles burned white. The house had gone silent again. So silent she could hear her pulse throbbing in her ears. No more creaks, no thunder, no wind, just breath. Shallow, right outside the door. She didn't speak. She didn't scream. She waited. Then, tap, tap, tap. 3 soft knocks. Claire lunged forward and yanked the door open. Nothing. Just the empty hallway. Dust floating in slanted light. But something was there. Another photograph. Taped to the door. This time, it was her. No longer in the attic. No longer with Eli. She stood in the front yard, facing away from the camera, staring at the woods. She didn't remember it being taken. She didn't remember that dress. Or that moment. But on the back, in the same childlike scrawl, were 3 words. "You left me." She sank to her knees. The panic wasn't distant now. It was inside her skin, clawing at her from the inside. Something had happened. Something she had buried so deep her mind shattered to keep it hidden. She pulled out the journal again, reread the last entries. The terror in her own handwriting. Her growing fear of herself. And something else. Something subtle she hadn't caught before, an address. Scrawled beside the final paragraph. Not this house, another location. She drove. Tires screeching, rain hammering the windshield. Every mile stretched like a rubber band. The address led her to an old maintenance shed on the edge of the state forest. Rusted roof, door ajar. Inside, mold, decay, rot, and one thing in the center, a box, taped shut. Claire dropped to her knees and peeled the tape back with shaking fingers. Inside was a small backpack. Children's clothes, toys, a Game Boy, a half-eaten candy bar, now petrified, and a final photograph. Eli, asleep in the dirt, eyes closed, head resting on the backpack. No bruises, no blood, just peaceful. And then it all came back every second. She hadn't meant to leave him. They'd been running, from the system, from the doctors, from the threats to separate them again. She thought the forest would be safer. Just a day or two, until the check-ins died down. She'd brought food, water, blankets. He said he'd be okay. Just wait here. I'll come back in the morning. But she hadn't. She'd walked out into the trees, dizzy and exhausted. brain breaking beneath years of pressure, and something in her had simply turned off. That's when the fugue state began. She didn't come back the next day, or the next, or ever. He'd waited. He'd waited until he couldn't anymore. Claire doubled over and vomited in the dirt beside the shed. The rain pounded harder, and from the tree line behind her, a voice, small, high, familiar, I knew you'd remember. She turned and saw him. Eli stood beneath the trees, or the image of him, the same face from the photographs, blonde hair matted with rain, blue t-shirt clinging to his thin frame, barefoot, mud-streaked, and still, he looked just like he did in the last photo. Peaceful. Too peaceful. Claire's body moved before her mind did. She stumbled forward, hands trembling, rain blurring her vision. Eli, she whispered, voice broken. Oh, God. Eli. He didn't move. He just watched. Her, his eyes too still, too deep, ancient almost, not like a child. You left me, he said. Not angry, not accusing, just sad. She dropped to her knees in front of him, sobbing, the mud soaking her jeans, the wind howling around them like judgment. I didn't remember. I didn't. Her throat seized. I thought I was helping. I thought if we ran, you said it would be one night, he said. Claire reached out, fingertips barely brushing his. But there was no warmth, no body, just air. I came back, she said. I remembered. I came back for you. You came back for you, he replied. The words sank like anchors into her chest. She looked around. The woods pulsed with silence. The shed behind her sat like a forgotten tomb. The box still open. The remnants of a life once hidden, now unearthed. And finally, Claire understood. He wasn't really here. Not anymore. But the weight of her forgetting, the abandonment, the slow dying alone in the forest, the child who waited until he couldn't wait anymore. It had built something that had lived in the house, in the attic, in the dreams. He wasn't haunting her. He was her. The fractured piece of her that had never stopped screaming beneath the surface. She had locked him away the moment she lost herself. In that attic, behind that nailed door, in every closed box and shredded memory. Her brain hadn't erased him by accident. It had buried him alive, and now he was surfacing. What do I do? She whispered, tears mixing with the rain. How do I make this right? Eli looked up at the sky. The trees swayed above him. You have to tell them. Claire blinked. Tell who? The people looking, the ones who think I ran away. The ones who never found me. He pointed to the shed. Tell them I was here. Tell them it wasn't a monster. It was just my mom. Who forgot? The wind died down. The trees stood still. Eli faded. Not dramatically. Not like a ghost in a movie. Just slowly. Like fog burning off in morning sun. And Claire was left kneeling in the mud, arms wrapped around herself, surrounded by the truth. She made the call. The police came. Search teams arrived, and when they unearthed the remains behind the shed, when they identified the clothes, the items, the child-sized skeleton curled against the rotted roots of a tree, Claire didn't lie. She told them everything, and in court, she didn't fight. The headlines came. So did the cameras. Mother lost and fugue found to have abandoned. Missing child. The nation watched. Some were horrified. Some sympathized. Most didn't know what to feel. But Claire didn't care. For the first time in years, the house at Gray Hollow went quiet. No footsteps. No whispers. No more photographs. Only silence, and somewhere in the stillness, a boy finally resting, exactly where she left him.